We are going to have to act if we want to live in a different world.
All right, yeah. Okay, I think we're set here. That's right. So in this stream, we're talking about, we're going to be watching some Piers Morgan. And Kasparian's going to be on there. And what I was told from the chat is that she says something kind of spicy. All right. I'm looking forward to this. Oh, yeah, this has me very excited. Very excited. I had to take my belt off for this one. Man, I am excited. All right. Also, it's Anna Kasparian, so it's great. I mean, I could just watch her talk, honestly. Okay. So I got the full Piers Morgan thing here, and I suppose we could just roll right into this, huh? We should probably get the context of everything, huh? Probably. Alex Shield Jones, how's it going, man? Hey, Bruce, how you doing? So here we go. I'm all set to start. Here we go.
When I woke up, were Greta Thunberg grinning her head off being given a sandwich by the IDF.
She's taking it upon herself to get on a boat and ship food there. That is what people do in a protest.
Filming a video before they were even intercepted, claiming they were kidnapped, is absolutely reprehensible. I mean, it's just shameful. You're vile. You're a liar and you're vile.
Wait.
Vile.
Well, there are two distracting sideshows overshadowing the current horrors unfolding in Gaza. The first is Greta Thunberg's selfie yacht, which has inevitably been intercepted by Israeli forces en route to the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, so I guess Greta Thunberg was going to try to help free Palestine. What was her goal? What was she trying? What was her plan? To me, that just seems like attention seeking. The whole thing seems attention seeking. You know, like what she could be like, how dare you? How dare you? To what, to Israel? How dare you? Let them have water. Let them eat. Free them. Free them from the open-air concentration camp. How dare you? Okay. I don't think Israel gives two shits what she has to say. But like, we're gonna move you along now.
My name is Greta Thunberg and I am from Sweden.
Wait, pronounce it again?
To the Gaza Strip.
My name is Greta Thunberg and I am
Greta Thunberg. Okay.
from Sweden. If you see this video, we have been intercepted and kidnapped in international waters by the Israeli occupational forces or forces.
Well, kidnapped is a strong word. They're what am I supposed to say? What's the YouTube terms of service agreement here with the Israels? I'm supposed to say. Oh shit! It says kidnapping. Okay. Yeah, it's a kidnapping. Yep. Greta Thunberg was kidnapped by Israel. She's being held hostage.
that support Israel. I urge all my friends, family and comrades to put pressure on the Swedish government to release me and the others as soon as possible.
No, Greta, you've not been kidnapped, and your choice of words is frankly an insult to the men.
Oh, Piers Morgan has a different copy than I do. Then why would I receive this one? No, it says kidnapped. It says kidnapped right here. Huh, weird.
Many Israelis who were kidnapped and held hostage by Hamas. 56 of them shamefully remain in Gaza, many of those presumed dead. And no, you're not raising awareness about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Many of us have been talking about it daily because we see the horrific scenes.
Yeah, right. Like, we already knew about it. We already knew about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Greta's like, I'm going there to save the day. I'm letting you guys know. Did you know there's a humanitarian crisis? Did you know that? It's like, okay.
Of desperation and starvation unfolding before our eyes. The only thing you, Greta, are raising awareness about, as always, is yourself. And on that note, the second big distraction at the moment is this. Answer me that one question. Do you know how many Hamas terrorists you've killed and how many children you've killed? You know there's two numbers.
I know the numbers.
I know she has not skipped a meal.
That came from the IDF. I know the numbers that came from a very, very established
Give me the two numbers.
Wait a second.
How come you know exactly how many Hamas terrorists you've killed, but you have no idea how many children you've killed?
Cares about human life.
I just asked you a simple
Well,
question.
they don't tally that. They don't keep track of that.
At the same time, Hamas is deliberately using the children as human shields.
Answer my question. Why is it you know one
that is true.
number, but not the other?
I'll give you the answer because
I mean, the crazy thing about that is when you have like a terrorist organization, a terrorist whole government there, using their civilians as shields there. It's quite the strategy there.
In the end of the day, we never target civilians. We only target the terrorists.
Why don't you know the statistics?
And we look.
Well,
you can
sometimes
ask this
there's
question.
casualties. You know,
are you saying no children have been killed in Gaza?
I didn't say that.
Are you saying that?
I didn't say that.
What are you saying?
I said.
Well, I make zero apologies for taking a tough line with the Israeli ambassador, who is the Israeli government's former representative in the UK. I asked her 17 times how she could be so certain about how many Hamas terrorists Israel has eliminated, but apparently doesn't have a clue how many innocent children have died in the process.
All right, so Piers
times.
Morgan's on the case, so it's going to be solved, right?
She just failed to give me an answer. Well, National Jewish Assembly released a statement which condemns the interview in the strongest possible terms, but has so far not condemned the deaths of so many civilians and children by an Israeli government, which two former Israeli prime ministers have now accused of senseless killing and war crimes. Laughably, their statement says when pro-Hamas apologists appear on his show, they are met with nods and softball questions. Anyone who's watched this show at all in the past 18 months will know how ridiculous a claim that is. What's currently happening is a sustained campaign of abuse and intimidation by people who don't like that I'm calling out what I now see as
back up. Abuse and intimidation
by people at all in the past 18 months will know how ridiculous a claim that is. What's currently happening is a sustained campaign of abuse and intimidation by people who don't like that I'm calling out
a campaign of abuse and intimidation towards Piers Morgan. Okay, like comment section? Okay.
I now see as a war of pointless destruction. And exactly the same thing, of course, on the other side, when I repeatedly defended Israel's right to respond to the heinous attacks on October the 7th. Back then, they said I was in the pocket of mysterious Israeli paymasters. Now I'm apparently funded by Qatar because I went to a state dinner in Doha to meet the President of the United States. Well, sorry to disappoint you, but nobody pays me to have any opinions about...
What, you do it for free? Well, that's the problem.
Anything, least of all a war. My opinions change as facts change, as everybody should.
Okay.
And no one's going to abuse and hector me into saying anything other than what I actually believe.
Right.
In a couple of minutes, I'll talk about all this with my panel. But first, I'm joined by the UN Special Rapporteur on the
UN Special Rapporteur, okay.
Occupied Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese. Welcome back to Uncensored, Francesca.
Thank you, Piers.
I just wanted to ask you, first of all, your reaction to what's been going on with Greta Thunberg. I've got to say, I have not been impressed by this. I think this was a very distracting piece of narcissistic attention-seeking by somebody with a track record for doing
I mean, it was. Like, she didn't have to do any of that. Like, everyone knew about... It didn't raise any awareness about what's going on in Gaza. Okay, it's like, oh, I'm going to insert myself in the situation now. Oh, no, I got kidnapped. It's like, okay. Well, what do you think was going to happen? They're going to, like, deport you back to Sweden or whatever.
This, who then compared herself by using the words like kidnapped to the people who've actually been kidnapped in this war, which I thought was extremely distasteful. I know you've been talking to her or some of the crew, certainly. What did we gain by this?
So first of all, thank you for having me, Piers. I hope we will have a peaceful conversation because I've been up almost all night following what was happening to the flotilla and responding to journalists interested in knowing what was happening. I would like to reframe the whole discussion, if you allow me. So, because the flotilla mission...
Everyone knew about what's going on in Gaza. That's what I said. But thank you for that.
Was a lawful humanitarian effort, not a stunt. And because of this, we need to look at why they were there and not who was there.
I'm going to wait. I want all the context.
As you know, it's incredible. It's abominable that a country whose leaders are indicted or investigated by the ICC for atrocity crimes and who's been investigated as a state for genocide get to control the flows of aid. This is absolutely ludicrous. Aid should be given according to principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence.
Okay,
Instead, Israel has turned this into a sadistic abattoir, as Chris Gunness recently put it. So the flotilla has substituted the inept reaction of the international community, which has expressed words of condemnation at best. So what I think is that the flotilla, with all the people who were on board, is all but performative. And let me tell you why I think that people like Greta Thunberg or Rima Hassan came on board. Yesterday, I was not in touch with her. I've been in touch with the captain because together with other special rapporteur Piers, we have called for the support of the flotilla since the very beginning, because we think that the flotilla is doing, even if symbolically, what member states should be doing. But just a few weeks ago, another flotilla with anonymous activist was hit in international waters. It was probably a crime, and no one has uttered a
Hit
word.
with what?
And in 2010, 10 people, 10 activists were killed, and no one has been held accountable despite a UN investigation.
Okay.
So people like Greta Thunberg and others came on board using their visibility, putting everything in the line.
What have they achieved? Honestly, listen, I hear you, but what have they achieved, honestly, other than Greta Thunberg getting her face on?
Well, according to my chat, Carl Juane didn't even know about the suffering in the Gaza Strip. Didn't know about the humanitarian crisis. Well, now he knows because of this whole thing. So there you have it. Greta Thunberg, I guess, it is doing her part.
A lot of newspapers, right, with a big beaming grin, receiving food, receiving food. Let me finish. All I've seen are big pictures of her grinning her head off, receiving food at the end of her ordeal, which lasted a few hours. She knew exactly what was going to happen. She knew the IDF would not let her anywhere near Gaza. The whole thing is, I think you said, is performative. And I'm not seeing people running around going, good on Greta Thunberg. She's really changed my mind about what's happening there. They've all gone, hang on a sec, you're calling yourself a kidnap victim. And your kidnappers are giving you
Piers
food and then taking you to a safe place afterwards.
Oh, a spade, a spade.
Why would you use that kind of analogy when actually the war is raging, as you know, because Israel is determined to kill all the Hamas terrorists and get their hostages back who actually were kidnapped?
I think you are the only one left who still believes the killing all Hamas terrorists. Piers, frankly, Israel has such a
sophisticated
that's what Israel
is. I said that's what Israel has said it is trying to do.
Not killing Hamas terrorists.
I've actually been hang on. I've been very just to be clear, Francesca, I've been very critical of the Israeli government in the last week.
But you're still mentioning that Israel is killing terrorists.
I'm repeating their mission statement, which they said.
You better say they're killing babies. They're killing the kids, man. They're looking for the kids, the babies. They're killing them. They're killing little terrorist babies. They're looking for little terror babies. They just bomb them, dude.
Was to eradicate Hamas and get their terrorists and get their hostages back. Dry skin, deeper wrinkles, and crepiness are just a few of the visible signs of aging. Well, so I'm told.
Interviewing me about the other flotilla who was hit in the middle of international waters, and it was deflagged, which is an incredible violation of people's safe sailing and security. When it happened a couple of weeks ago, it's people like, I'm not saying people like you, but the media is quite sensationalist, and it has been salivating around the fact that there was Greta Thunberg on the boat. I've never talked to Greta during the context of this mission. I've been talking to the captain and to the communication room on the ground because I was just interested. You know, Piers, people in Gaza are seriously starving as they are bombed every day without respite. 400 people are killed every day.
So then it's like, yeah, we know, but what's Greta's mission here? To show us again? To show us more? To remind us of stuff we know? Like what are we supposed to do about it? You know? He's going to go over there and say, Israel, knock it off. Knock it off, Israel. You got to feed these people.
And I've seen a glimpse of hope on the face of many because they were waiting for the flotilla. There should be more flotilla.
Come on, you don't believe that for a moment.
And then
you don't believe that. I'm sorry,
place.
Francesca. It's simply ridiculous to think that anyone in Gaza thought that this flotilla was actually going to get anywhere near them and give them any of the relatively meager supplies they had. The only person who ended up being fed was Greta Thunberg by the IDF. How is that anything?
Well, that's just proven right there that the IDF won't even let little supplies coming from Greta's little floating her little boat. Okay. Yeah, I'm talking about it now. Maybe she succeeded. Maybe she did.
But a painful embarrassment.
Let's all get on boats and bring them supplies. Go out there, guys.
Do you really believe the Israeli propaganda throwing sandwiches at them? While, of course, the answer was give it to the people in Gaza. Come on, Piers. Come on. You're better than this, Piers. That sandwich was for propaganda.
I think you're better than this. I think you're better than this. The idea you think that anyone in Gaza... No, hang on, Francesca. Francesca.
Was scared of.
Francesca,
Yes.
you do not believe for a moment, if you're honest, that anybody in Gaza genuinely thought Greta Thunberg was going to rock up on the beach with supplies. You knew that was
actually, Piers, there was a starving little girl that knew Greta was on the way, and she was waiting. She was waiting desperately for the supply of tortas and water that was coming from Greta's boat. She was desperate for that. And because they were intercepted and then kidnapped, that little girl died of starvation. So shame on you, Piers. Shame on you.
going to happen. Nobody in Gaza said to you, did they? We think that's going to happen. Nobody did.
You clearly seem not to read my mind, Piers, thankfully. No, it's that you're wrong, because you keep on focusing on Greta Thunberg, while
so do
people
you.
like me and people I've been speaking with in Gaza didn't even pay attention. For them, what matters is that...
Well, and I was kind of joking around and jest and all that, but realistically, yeah, they probably don't want Greta there on the ground, walking around, streaming, live streaming all what's going on over there, right? You got to think about that for real. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that pisses Israel off for sure. Absolutely would. Little Greta going around, the activist that she is, showing everybody through a YouTube live stream or whatever live stream, all the starving kids, the suffering, the misery, making it much more real for everyone. Yeah, Bruce. You're right about that, Bruce. And Carr, that's right. They want food. They probably want food. That's right. They do. Food and water.
Humanity has not forgotten them, is that there is someone who tries to break that awful siege that has turned their ghetto into an extermination camp, Piers. Again, I say, let's move away from the flotilla, because the flotilla, one thing is sure, has raised two important points. First,
tortilla sounds like a Spanish
member states
food.
are not doing enough, and
Tortilla.
if there is something that is performative, is Western condemnation, including that of the UK, because this boat was sailing with a UK flag, and the fact that Israel says in international water, intercepted in international water, a UK flag sailing boat means that this is can qualify as an act of aggression against the UK. Have you heard the voice of any UK politician on that? Maybe they spoke. I didn't hear that. And again, this is the usual politics dynamic. The rest is that today there is a lot of attention.
We're getting close to the end of part.
And in 30 minutes, 1 hour, there were millions of people who had seen my alarm and that of others on the, I was on the phone with them as they were encircled by vessels and then by quadcopters. Quadcopters are the drones who are there to shoot, Piers. And I asked these people, guys, put on the helmets, can you? And they say,
nobody shot them. Nobody shot them. No one did anything
but
to
in
them.
2010 they did. Can you predict what Israel will be doing? It's not by, I was sure that Israel would not give order to shoot at these people because of their visibility. But it takes one person to be in the wrong state of mind for things to go incredibly wrong.
That's right. That's right. We're talking about Israel. I mean, hell, they just, for some reason, decided to just napalm strike a U.S. boat a long time ago. For no reason. Or for insidious reasons. Oopsie. Oh, we didn't mean to drop the napalm on you. We totally didn't see that American flag waving.
10 people lost their life in 2010, Piers.
USS
and
Liberty.
we would dishonor their memory if we continue to ignore them and talk about Greta Thunberg.
2010 is a very different story at a very different time. And
For you, Piers, but not for the people in Gaza. Hello, because you woke up in 2023 after.
No,
October.
I was covering it in
2010.
Sorry, just to be clear, I was covering
they
it.
They had already suffered.
I was covering it then. I worked at
deaths.
CNN. I was covering it all then. I've covered this conflict for decades. So don't insult.
And you keep on calling
Don't be
conflict,
patronising
Piers.
about when I've covered this and what I've said. If you go back and check, you'll know. But the reality is that despite your heroic attempt to build this as some great, fantastic protest that grabbed the world's attention, actually most people thought it was a puerile, pathetic stunt by an attention seeker.
Where are the statistics, Piers? I really would like.
Now I'm starting to wonder if it was really just a stunt. You know, that was because when I think of Greta, obviously I think of the whole like "how dare you" thing. And it's like, okay, whatever. You're just gonna roll my eyes or whatever. Okay. But I think it really shows that Israel doesn't want anyone else to go in there. They don't want any other eyes, any other cameras, you know, to go in there and to show the world what's actually happening. Why is that? Why is that? Why keep it in the shroud? Why keep it hidden? Well, I can tell you why I keep things in secret. I can tell you why people do things in secret. Keep things hidden, right? That's right. They're doing something they shouldn't be doing. They're doing something they do not want to be caught doing. They don't want people to really know the full extent of it. Kind of like how a certain group in World War II like to keep those camps hidden. Yeah, let's get those likes up. For 10 likes, I'll take a shot of vodka. We're taking shots tonight. I'll go ahead and take a shot on the house because Alex Shield Jones was so kind and provided me with $2. Thank you. Thank you for that. If we reach the goal of 20, it should be 50. 25. I was gonna do 50, but 25. The goal of $25 will do a ghost pepper.
To see the statistics because I don't think so at all. Piers, this is so disingenuous because it really, look at what's going on around the world. There is support expressed toward the flotilla all over.
The flotilla's a
from
joke.
Tunisia today,
Okay, I'm gonna tell you. Every time I hear flotilla, I think of what I leave in the toilet after I eat a lot of Mexican food. Flotilla, flotilla, flotilla. Okay, I just had to say that.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
This is the
The
first time that
flotilla
something
was
like this
a
happened.
joke, a
Why are we
publicity.
talking about the flotilla and not
It was
Gaza?
an attention-seeking publicity stunt that was designed to raise attention for Greta Thunberg. Nobody else, no one in Gaza has benefited from this ridiculous
It's
stunt.
only you
It got nowhere
focusing on
near
Greta
Gaza.
Thunberg.
It was never going to
Piers.
get anywhere near Gaza. Obviously, she
Here's
knew
a
that.
shot
We
for
knew
you,
that.
Alex
And if she's so
Jones.
concerned, why is she grinning like a Cheshire cat in all the pictures? What's so
You
funny?
should not be insulting. You should not be insulting the facial expression on anyone.
She's insulting my
Because I've not
intelligence
heard
with her
anyone
facial
doing that
expressions.
with you, Piers.
Well, don't grin.
This is so-
If it's that
this is
serious,
so
don't grin.
offensive that-
I
it's so
feel
offensive and
desperately concerned.
misogynistic.
I feel desperately concerned for the plight of
Well,
the innocent.
should you,
for the,
I feel
let me
desperately
finish.
concerned that a
Let me
serious
finish.
journalist talks
Let me
about
finish.
the grin on the face of
Let me
someone
finish.
who's been sailing for 8 days.
Fine, let me
And
finish.
today you talk about her grimace?
Fine.
Come on.
Let me
All right,
finish.
Alex Shield Jones.
I feel very
Here's the
concerned,
shot
as I've
for
been
you.
saying loudly in the last week, about the ongoing appalling plight of innocent civilians in Gaza. All I can say for sure is that this stunt has done absolutely zero to help any of the people in Gaza. Zero.
This is your opinion, Piers, and
Yeah.
I respect it very much, and it counts 0.
Okay. Well, in that case, we will agree to disagree. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I appreciate it.
You don't want to talk with me about Gaza and the awful situation there and the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. So you just wanted to talk about what you think it's a stunt.
Yeah.
You called me for that. So
Yes.
I'm international law expert, and you called me on your program to talk about Greta Thunberg.
Well, you've had nearly 20 minutes to talk about whatever you wanted to talk
I
about.
answered your question, Piers.
Yeah, you had 20
answered
minutes.
your
If you wanted to talk about something
However-
else, talk about something else.
However, I won't bother you further. Thank you very much. Till the next one. Bye-bye,
Okay.
Piers.
Bye-bye.
Oh.
Well, joining me.
She quit. She rage quit. She lost. Blood sports rules. Technically, she lost. Anyway. So yeah, guys, let me know where you are with that. What do you think of the Greta thing?
Joining me now, the American-Israeli commentator Emily Schrader, Anna Kasparian, executive producer and host of The Young Turks.
All right, Anna Kasparian. Okay, let's just leave it right here for right now. Hold on here. Hold on here. All right. Look at Anna Kasparian. Looking sharp. Looking ready. Okay. Yeah, looking pretty good, huh? All right, let's do this. You kneel for your queen, huh? Not a bad looking queen. All right, here we go. Yeah, let's do it.
PragerU's Shabbos Kestenbaum, who's suing Harvard University.
Gross. Who's this guy? PragerU? That's the best they got? His face looks like a tumor. What is this? What is that hair? What is it?
University over anti-Semitism, and Omar Badr, the Palestinian-American journalist. Well, welcome to all of you. Let me start with you, if I may, Emily Schrader. The interview I just conducted there with Francesca Albanese from the UN, I just find it extraordinary that anyone would think that Greta Thunberg, with her silly flotilla stunt, was doing anything other than promoting Greta Thunberg. But have I got this wrong?
I mean, that was a pretty painful interview to listen to.
Right,
I actually happen to agree with you very much when it comes to Greta. It was very clear that this selfie yacht was a production for Greta, by Greta, and for Greta. It did very, very little, if anything, to even raise awareness for the situation. And of course, how they framed it, filming a video before they were even intercepted, claiming they were kidnapped, is absolutely reprehensible. I mean, it's just shameful to even use this language at a time when there are dozens of hostages who are still in Hamas captivity, 612 days today, utterly shameful. And beyond that, the humanitarian aid that they were allegedly taking into the Gaza Strip, which was 100 kilograms of flour, just one truck of humanitarian aid that's being transferred by Israel into Gaza right now contains 25 tons of flour alone. That's 250 times what Greta was bringing in on the entire flotilla. And that's only one truck. So if we say that Israel brings in 100 trucks of humanitarian aid that is then distributed by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation that they're working with now, assuming that Hamas isn't shooting them, then that means that 25,000 tons of aid, 25,000 more tons of aid are being distributed to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip by the state of Israel with the production, with the assistance of local Palestinians on the ground. Then what Greta...
she's paid to say that. Okay. Let's see this flour. Let's see this. Let's see the video evidence of this distribution of food. Okay. We got 29 watching. Hey.
Was bringing in the first place. So the idea that this had anything to do with helping Palestinians on the ground is absurd.
Okay.
And I actually agree with you completely that there was nobody in the Gaza Strip that believed Greta was going to roll up on the shores of Gaza and provide humanitarian aid.
No, I'm going to come to Omar to respond to that. But just before we move on, I also want to talk about...
Yeah, exactly, Bruce. It's not a kidnapping if Jesus do it. She's not being kidnapped. She's going to be... Well, I don't know. Like, I received a copy from Israel because greatest ally Israel, and I was paid to say this. I was paid, sponsored by Netanyahu. I was paid to say that, yes, Israel did kidnap Greta Thunberg. She's actually held in a dungeon right now. She's being tortured as we speak because she's believed to be working with the Houthis. So I don't know what Piers is saying. It's not what I got. You know, I'm just saying I'm just reading. I'm literally reading the page. Okay.
The two interviews I've done, one with the Israeli ambassador to the UK and one with Natasha Hausdorff, the lawyer, in which both of them, I just kept asking the same question. I mean, I'm going to ask it to you. Why is it that everyone on the pro-Israeli side of this can always tell me exactly how many Hamas terrorists have been killed, but they can never tell me how many innocent children have been killed in the process?
Because they don't tally that. Who cares about the innocent kids being killed? They don't care about that.
Of killing the terrorists. Why are they only counting the terrorists being killed, not the children? This month, Tax Network.
Oh, Tax Network. Oh, we're going to skip this ad here.
Government spokesperson. I never have been. I've never worked for the Israeli government. But I don't think that we know exactly how many Hamas terrorists have been killed. I think that they have an estimate. And I also think that they have an estimate of civilians. They have not.
But clearly they don't.
Been releasing those numbers consistently throughout this war because it varies a lot. And
because it might be a little embarrassing. He's like, well, we killed a lot of terrorists, but I mean, you know, there's some kids, you know, there's some babies in the mix. Oopsie daisy.
In addition to that, we have a lot of the lists that have been released by Hamas, at least initially by the Gaza Ministry of Health, which is, of course, Hamas controlled, that they have changed the data after the fact. So there's a lot of inconsistencies. There's a lot of information from the dust that has not settled. This is an ongoing war. And I think that's part of the reason we don't know all the answers to that. Nonetheless, any civilian death is a tragedy. It's an awful, awful thing. I wish.
Oh, that's just a platitude, bitch. I just wanted to say that. Let's get those likes up.
it wasn't happening. But unfortunately, it is Hamas that has rejected repeated ceasefires, including the most recent one that would have seen at least 2 months of ceasefire, as well as the release of 10 hostages, as well as the bodies of dozens more.
All right, Omar, first of all...
A pause in fighting, a pause
in
fighting.
Oh. Well, look at that. Anna's not even waiting for her turn. Did y'all catch that?
At least 2 months of ceasefire, as well as the release of 10 hostages, as well as the bodies of dozens more.
All right, Omar, first of all...
A pause in fighting.
He just goes right in. A pause in fighting. A pause in fighting.
A pause in fighting is not a ceasefire. A pause in fighting is not a ceasefire. I'm so sick of the rebranding of a ceasefire. A 2-month pause in war is not a ceasefire. Period. End of story. Go ahead, Omar.
Then Hamas...
Oh, yeah. No, she said period. End of story, bitch. Respect Anna. Respect her. The queen has spoken.
Is welcome. Hamas is welcome to release all of the hostages.
I said what I said.
If you release all of the hostages,
that is not a
then we can talk
ceasefire.
about it.
This idea that you release the hostages and as soon as the hostages are released, Israel will continue their genocide is unacceptable. Unacceptable. But anyway, continue.
You know what else is unacceptable?
Because Hamas knows that's what's going to happen. I mean, they released them on. Oh no! Carpet bombed. Everything's carpet bombed.
The fact that there are more than 50 hostages being held by
you're
Hamas
unacceptable.
for more
You're
than 600 days.
individual. Let me ask you.
Oh, that's right. She took Omar's turn because he said Omar, and then Anna just goes right in there. Who's Omar? Is Omar the? Oh, Omar's the Joe Rogan looking guy. His name is Omar? Oh, that's ugly. That's an ugly name, man.
Something. Let me ask you something, Emily. You were on this show. You were on this very show a year ago debating Abby Martin. And you said, you fancy yourself a journalist. During that debate, you said that Israel has no interest in occupying Gaza.
Which is a flat out lie. Oh, they want to occupy. They want to turn that into a tourist place, okay?
Is now very obviously and overtly claiming they intend to occupy Gaza indefinitely, and they announced the construction of 22 illegal settlements in the West Bank, which they also intend to annex. Can you now admit to the world that you were incorrect?
Yeah. Oh, look at that face. Look at that freeze frame. Look at that freeze framed. Oh, man. She is stunned. What is she going to say? Is she going to say, yes, Queen. Yes, Anna, I was wrong. No, she's going to say, no, that's not true. Yet Yahoo says that's not true.
No, the situation on the ground changes. And beyond that, this could have been avoided in the first place if the hostages had been released and if Hamas had surrendered their weapons, which is something that Israel has stated repeatedly.
You're a liar and you're vile.
Continue with the ad hominem attacks, we're not
for the Israeli government and you disgust me.
I'm actually not. I've never worked for the Israeli government.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you have any more actual arguments, or are you just going to hurl ad hominem attacks?
Ministry of Strategic Affairs, you've never worked with them?
Last time I checked, neither of you are identifying as Omar Badr. So let me come to Omar. Omar, first of all, I'll talk to you about a few things here. But first of all, your response to the Greta Thunberg Freedom Flotilla. I thought the whole thing was a fatuous waste of everyone's time. Something that was designed deliberately as a publicity stunt, achieved absolutely nothing, and actually made a bit of a mockery of the real plight of people there.
No. I think we disagree on that, but let me just say, Emily claims that she is not a spokesperson for the Israeli government, but if you just listen to the avalanche of propaganda she just spewed on television, the question is, would it sound any different if she were officially hired by the Israeli government? And the answer
no, it would not sound any different.
Is no. She has no qualms, no intellectual honesty, no moral consistency, and is simply just here to say whatever she needs to say in order to make the Israeli government looks good. So that is pro-Israeli government propaganda, whether you're officially employed by them or not, is entirely secondary. Now, on the question of Greta,
I condemn the Israeli government,
think
but continue.
that there is something attention-seeking about protests by definition because you're trying to draw attention to an injustice. And in the case of Greta, she is drawing attention to the fact that Gaza is under siege, that Israel is blocking food from going in, that people are starving inside of Gaza because of the policy that Israel has imposed on them. And world governments are displaying an unspeakable moral failure in refusing to stand up to the Israeli government and insist that food get to the people of Gaza. And so she's taking it upon herself to get on a boat and ship food there. That is what people do in a protest. Yes, she may have known that it's unlikely that the Israeli government and the military are going to allow her to get through, but that doesn't mean that you don't try and challenge unjust systems. That is just basics. I mean, when you think about Rosa Parks refusing to get up and go to the back of the bus, you can say, well, that's symbolic. Well, yes, it is symbolic, but it means something.
You can't seriously, sorry,
you
but
refuse to just accept
Omar,
it.
you can't
No. What Greta did was equivalent to Rosa Parks. Full stop, Piers. That was a Rosa Parks moment. Going on the flotilla, trying to get to Gaza, put some fresh eyes there and bring some food to those starving kids. Oh, that's actually more than what Rosa Parks did. Rosa Parks was just wanting a seat on the bus, okay? She wasn't trying to feed starving black kids on the bus. Okay, really, you think about it, what Rosa Parks did was actually kind of selfish. Well, hold on. I don't want to go that far. Greta was like, hey, I want to take food, some aid to Gaza, and I want to show the people what it actually looks like there on the ground via IRL live stream. So honestly, the new poll should be who's more of a hero, actually, Rosa Parks or Greta. Ticket shots for donos, super chats, members, all that stuff. Okay, I'm just gonna put that up there. Yeah, you guys let me know who's more of a hero. Put Rose for Rosa Parks, but Greta for Greta. Very simple.
Refuse to accept it.
Omar, Omar, with the best will in the world, you cannot seriously, with a straight face, compare Rosa Parks to Greta Thunberg. Come on.
I'm not comparing them.
You just did.
The point I'm drawing attention to, Piers.
You literally just did.
I'm saying what's similar about those situations. No, the point of an analogy is to draw on a similarity. The similarity between the situations is not that Greta is like Rosa Parks. What's similar about them is that people in the face of injustice refuse to comply with that injustice. When
yes.
somebody sees that a captive population is being refused food, we don't just accept that we are not going to go there. Just because you individually do not have the power to force the issue yourself doesn't mean that you try to lead by example so that hopefully other people can force the issue. And collectively, if everybody acted the way Greta did, then we would actually break that blockade and help the people of Gaza.
All the pictures I saw today when I woke up were of Greta Thunberg grinning her head off, being given a sandwich by the IDF. How that helps anybody on the Gaza Strip is completely beyond me. Let me bring in Shabbos. Welcome to Uncensored. I think it's the first time we've had you on. Look, I've had a lot of heat in the last week from the two quite feisty interviews I did, although the idea that me and feisty
Anna's
interviews
just waiting for her time.
A new brand development seems a bit ridiculous. But anyway, I have. And what's been very interesting has been the reaction I've had on social media. A very sustained campaign to abuse me, shame me, threaten me, silence me, all from, it seems, people who just object intensely to me criticizing Israeli government policy, when in fact most people in the world right now are criticizing the current Israeli government strategy. And the reason for that is that the original mission was supposedly to go after Hamas and get the hostages back. Well, Hamas is still alive and well, and clearly the numbers have been depleted, but it hasn't reduced their ability to run things in Gaza, or the hostages would have been released, and they haven't been. But secondly, if you look at the reality of what they're doing with their blockade, for example, only recently lifted in any capacity at all, for 3 months they waged a systematic starvation program against an impoverished people, largely women.
Systematic starvation program. But some would say a Holocaust. No, but I mean that is what you would call it. I know I was kind of playing that up, but wouldn't you call it that? I mean, what would you call it that? What would you call that? If you're starving the people on purpose? You're starving the people on purpose, knowing that they're starving, knowing that they need food. And if you're starving them, you're killing them. So what do you call that? Boom, 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 boom. You call it what it is.
Women and children in smashed down areas that have already been obliterated by airstrikes. And that, as even former Israeli prime ministers have said, it's war crimes. Just open and shut war crimes. So the idea that somehow, if I raise a critical eye at this, I then automatically, according to X and people on there, I'm a Jew hater. I'm an anti-Zionist and all these things, right? All these terrible things. I'm committing blood libels. It's all complete nonsense, isn't it?
Sure, I certainly pity the level of political discourse, not just in our country, but also across the world. This is increasingly why young Americans are being dissuaded from joining the electoral process. We have to stop with the straw man argument. We have to stop with the ad hominem attacks. The reality is very, very simple. On October 7th, Hamas and Gazan civilians went into a sovereign country. They raped Jewish women. They kidnapped Jewish babies. They mutilated communities. If you truly want the war crimes that you just described, which I certainly disagree with of that characterization, it's very simple. Release the hostages, surrender, the war ends tomorrow. Israel has said that repeatedly.
Bull crap. They released the hostages. It's not over. It's not over. They're just going to kill them all.
I encourage Omar, I encourage Anna, I encourage Mahmoud Abbas. If you truly care about the plight of the Palestinian civilians, we don't need to keep going on.
Hang on. Shabbat, hang on.
Just return the hostages and surrender.
Yeah, if only it was that simple. But what is now clear from the rhetoric of people like the foreign minister, Smotrich, who was on camera last week outlining what the new mission appears to be, which many suspected may have been the mission from the start, although I don't see hard evidence to prove that. But he was crystal clear. We're going to clear all the Palestinians out. And then you see 22 new illegal settlements planned for the West Bank. The mission creep has been extraordinary and is now out in the open and brazen. We want to get rid of the Palestinians, says government senior minister. I mean, it's crystal clear. It's coming out of his own mouth.
Yeah, he said it right there. He wanted to get rid of all the Palestinians. He wanted to get rid of all of them. That's what they want to do. Because they already have hopes. They already have plans for what to do with Gaza. That strip. Okay?
The problem with that assertion is Bezalel Smotrich is part of the war cabinet. Wait, hang on. The problem is Bezalel Smotrich is not part of the war cabinet. Bezalel Smotrich is
come off it. You can't believe this nonsense. I heard this. I heard this from the ambassador. I heard it from Natasha Hausdorff, who's the most sensitive lawyer in the history of lawyers and couldn't take a bit of challenging. But this idea that Smotrich is some unimportant, irrelevant person in the Israeli government is for the birds. He's one of the loudest, strongest, most influential people there. He's the only reason Netanyahu is actually prime minister. And if he yanked his support for Netanyahu, bang, Netanyahu goes. So please do not try and treat me like an idiot by saying that Smotrich is somehow irrelevant. He's obviously not.
So if you wanted to disagree with the answer, you first have to hear the whole answer. It'd sort of be the equivalent of you going on national television saying, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene said X, Y, Z, and therefore that's reflective of the federal government. But Bezalel Smotrich is someone who I proudly protested against. He is not making decisions.
She's not in the cabinet. What's the analogy? I don't get it. She's not. No, correct. It would be like it would be like Marco Rubio doing it. And then it would be highly
Which would be a big
significant.
difference.
There's no comparison between Marjorie Taylor Greene and Smotrich. He's the foreign minister of Israel. She's nothing.
Hang on. First of all, Bezalel Smotrich is not the foreign minister. That's Gideon Sa'ar. Second of all, Bezalel Smotrich is not making decisions pertaining to the war.
What is what's his job title? The finance minister. I'm sorry. He's the finance minister. Let me correct that. I said that twice.
Okay.
It's wrong. He's the finance minister, the equivalent of the chancellor of the exchequer.
The finance minister, the one who's going to be handling the finances, bankrolling the military operations, is saying, hey, we want to get rid of all these Palestinians, actually. We want to get rid of all of them. We want to use that land. We want to use the land and build up all this stuff, all these settlements. Open her up for tourism. Yeah. It sounds like Well, it sounds like it's a little bit more than the hostages. It sounds like it's a little bit more than revenge for October 7.
Which in my country is the second most important member of the cabinet, right? So it would be the equivalent of that in the United States, right? And the idea that that's Marjorie Taylor Greene is nonsense.
Sure. So the broader point is this. There are currently 0 Jews living in Jenin, 0 Jews living in Nablus, 0 Jews living in Gaza. If you truly believe that Gaza is trying to be repopulated by Jews, then why is it that every single last Jew was kicked out of Gaza in 2005, including dead Jewish bodies that were dug from the graves in order to be expelled from Gaza? The reality is as follows. The overwhelming majority of the Israeli people believe in a two-state solution. Increasingly, though, the problem is not the Israeli people. The problem is the Palestinian people, who are increasingly, as all public data supports. They do not believe in a two-state solution. They believe in Judenreich land from the river to the sea. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just inventing stuff right now. Country. And that is the issue at hand. Of course, innocent civilians are being killed in Gaza. That, unfortunately, is a consequence of war, which is why it was a really bad strategic decision for Hamas to invade Israel on October 7th, which is why if you truly want to end the conflict, it's not rocket science. Just call on Hamas right now, release the hostages, and surrender. Why is it that there was a Thai national who was not Jewish, who was not Israeli, who was released from captivity 2 days ago? What was he doing as a hostage in the terror tunnels of Gaza for more than 600 days? The reality is Hamas is a dictatorial, tyrannical regime that obliterates any emancipation that the Palestinian people have to self-expression and the freedom of movement. And I call on all peoples, whether it's on college campuses, whether it's in the media, those in Western civilization, if you truly care about the Palestinian people, then you do everything in your power to amplify the work of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which just yesterday gave 1 million boxes of aid and is doing the exact same thing today and will do the exact same thing tomorrow.
Okay,
maybe the people are like that. Now I know some crazy stuff about how terrorist regime and all that stuff about Hamas and all that stuff. Maybe they're like that because they feel like they're in a constant state of war against Israel. Because if they don't try to fight them, it's like if they don't fight them, or even if they don't fight them, they're going to be eradicated by Israel. So they have to try to fight them. And yeah, it's kind of weird that how they will use civilians as human shields, but it's like active desperation. Very desperate tactics being used. Very severe. Anyway.
People,
I've given you a good chance to speak there.
Palestinians have died as they. I have to get this out. Okay. You want to talk about how Greta Thunberg got involved in some sort of, political theater, whatever. I don't care what anyone thinks about Greta Thunberg. I see that as a distraction. What it's distracting from is the fact that IDF soldiers are intentionally shooting at and killing desperate Palestinians as they're trying to get humanitarian aid from this Israeli-backed organization, which, of course, is able to even exist because they defamed UNRWA. They starved Palestinians for months. Shut up. They've starved Palestinians for months. And then, as the Palestinians are desperate for food, they lure them in with this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and shoot at them. Upward of 200 people since late May have been shot at and killed by Israeli soldiers. Do not forget that. That's the heart of this story. And let's not forget about the 232 journalists in Gaza that have been slaughtered by the IDF.
The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation even confirmed it was Hamas.
You people disgust me.
They confirmed it was Hamas.
There's no humanity with people like you, Emily. No humanity.
The fire, man. I want to go back. I want to hear that.
Food, they lure them in with this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and shoot at them. Upward of 200 people since late May have been shot at and killed by Israeli soldiers.
So what, they just lure them in with the humanitarian aid and just shoot at them anyway? That's war crime right there.
Do not forget that. That's the heart of this story. And let's not forget about the 232 journalists in Gaza that have been slaughtered by the IDF.
The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation even confirmed it was Hamas.
You people disgust me.
They confirmed it was Hamas.
There's no humanity with people like you, Emily. No humanity.
Intentionally lying and blaming the IDF.
I can't even handle your voice.
The IDF is the one who is assuring that there's humanitarian aid.
I'm an Armenian.
There are 11 million meals that have been distributed already. 11 million.
You are a genocider
Gaza
and a defender of
Humanitarian
genocide.
Foundation.
Disgusting.
I know you don't like facts, Anna, but this is the reality. The only person who is threatening, the only group that is threatening the distribution of aid is Hamas. That is who has been shooting at innocent Palestinians.
No military
Palestinians themselves.
Israeli forces.
It's a lie that has been debunked.
Don't all talk over each other. Don't talk over each other.
Like the Israelis are the victims.
All right, here's what I would say.
Not able to be
Emily, here's what I would say.
Hamas shot at them.
Here's what I would say.
I think she's confused by who was shooting at them. Was it Hamas or was it IDF forces? I mean, so I'm gonna take Anna's side on this one. I haven't seen the footage. I haven't read anything about it, but I'm gonna believe Anna on this one, just the passion of that.
We don't actually know for a fact.
Hamas shot at them.
Okay, we don't actually know. We don't actually know for a fact who has done all this shooting, or how much of it was done by the IDF, or how much by Hamas. I'm sure Hamas wouldn't hesitate to shoot their own. They've done it many times. But we don't know, and there's a reason we don't know, Emily, for a fact, is that the Israeli government continues to ban international journalists from going into Gaza. And there's only one reason, as Jeremy Bowen, the BBC's Middle East editor, said in a very interesting and thoughtful, lengthy piece about all this. There can only be one conclusion, because at the start of this, the IDF took international journalists to the kibbutzes where this horror had unfurled and showed them everything. But ever since then, they banned international journalists from going to see what's happening in Gaza. And the only conclusion of these two positions, one showing what happened to Israelis, but not allowing anyone to see what's happening to Palestinians, the only logical conclusion is that the IDF is doing things they don't want people to see.
Exactly. And I'm a simple man, but that right there, all I need to know, be like, okay, yeah, they're doing some bullshit. They're doing some fucked up shit in there. All right. Very, very simple.
So, Piers, I'm actually really glad you brought that up.
Hang on, Emma. I want Emily to respond to that.
I actually agree with your position. I think that the state of Israel should do much more to ensure that international journalists are able to freely enter Gaza. I think that there are other concerns on the ground, like security concerns, because it has been that Hamas has taken international journalists hostage. You know as well as me, Alan Johnston is a great example of this in 2021.
Really, honestly, Hamas probably wants journalists there so they could show what's going on. If anything, so I don't really buy that whole thing that they're not allowed to go in there because there's concerns that Hamas may kidnap them. I mean you don't know really what's going to happen. But they probably want more exposure if anything.
As well as 2014, we saw that Hamas was pressuring international journalists on the ground, not allowing reports to be sent out unless they were approved by Hamas. So there is an actual threat in addition.
But the risk assessment should be made by the journalists. It's not for the IDF.
I agree with you.
Or the Israeli government to determine a risk assessment for independent international journalists. They will decide.
I agree with you. I think that Israel should ensure and do everything they can. I agree with you. I think that Israel should do everything they can in order to ensure their security as much as humanly possible. But there are a lot of factors at play here, including the use of human shields by Hamas, including the pressure on international journalists, including the threat of hostage taking. And so there are a lot of factors that play into this decision. Now, I'm with you on the end result. I think that this is something that Israel really needs to do, and it's critically important because I believe that the information that they find in the materials that they are able to go through, in the materials that even the IDF has released about some of these people, some of the claims that they have made, are things that should be scrutinized by the international community on the ground.
All right, Omar.
We have to be clear first about who is killing the people who are going to these distribution centers. There's always a pattern that repeats itself over and over again of the Israeli government claiming they had nothing to do with an incident until there's an independent investigation In this case, in the most recent shooting, CNN did an analysis of the recordings and concluded that the gunfire was consistent with something that would come out of the Israeli military, and that's why they pointed the finger at the Israeli military.
Look at that. So there was an investigation there. Look at that. Oh, look at that there.
And this is a pattern that repeats.
You lure them with food and then you shoot them. Wow. That's called hunting.
Itself over and over again. You had the killing of 15 paramedics by the Israeli military that initially the Israeli military pretended they had nothing to do with until the facts were uncovered, until they dug up the ground and saw where the ambulance was buried, until they got the recordings of the incident. And once they're caught red-handed, it's always like, oops, that must have been an accident. But at what point are we going to stop listening to a government that has produced a record of lying over and over again? I mean, they've pointed at a calendar on a wall in a hospital that simply has the days of the week on it written in Arabic, and just assuming that this is for a Western audience that doesn't read Arabic. And so they point at it and say, these are the names of terrorists on this calendar. I mean, we just have to get to the point to where we can't give this government the benefit of the doubt anymore. They and everybody who does apologetics for them, like Emily does, are simply full of shit. There's just no other way to put it. I mean,
look at that.
We have to hold bare minimal level of standard for the information that comes. And I'm sorry, at some point, when you produce a record of lying over and over and over and over and over again, we have to stop taking anything that you say seriously. And we have to look at the fact and to look at a government that is carrying out genocidal atrocities in Gaza.
Everyone seems to really be responding to what he's saying, except for this white dude who's just sitting there dead-eyed. Like there's nothing in him. He's like dead.
Gaza, as defined by virtually every expert on the genocide and every major human rights organization, all of them at this point line up and say, these are genocidal policies. We know who's responsible for atrocities being committed against the civilian population that is being deliberately destroyed in Gaza, to pursue what Smotrich said, to empty Gaza out of Palestinians. That is the plan. And just for the record, Hamas had offered to give up governance of Gaza and release all the hostages. But that was not good enough for Israel, because right now Netanyahu is saying the goal is to pursue Trump's plan of emptying Gaza out. Dropsite has done incredible reporting on the details of these negotiations back and forth. And to see Hamas willing to give up governing Gaza and release all the hostages, and Israel still find a reason to say no to that deal, tells you what Israel's real intentions are. Their intentions are about destroying Palestinian existence. And they're doing it in the West Bank as well, except at a slow.
You got to destroy them. You got to move them out. You got to move them out. That's what they want to do. I believe that.
Pace.
All right, Shabos, here's my question for you. It's a genuine question. I expected blowback when I got more aggressive in my questioning of an Israeli ambassador and a pro-Israeli lawyer. I expected it. But the scale of it and the venom and viciousness of it and the deliberately disingenuous twisting of my criticism of an Israeli government policy right now as somehow equating, as many of them did, to Jew hating and so on, and being anti-Semitic. Appalling.
Yeah, you got to be careful. You don't want to piss
for which
them off.
There's no evidence I've ever,
some of them might be bots,
been anti-Semitic or ever hated Jewish people, and there wouldn't be because I don't. But this idea that that's the only default position
they gotta
to anyone who criticizes
make sure they
the
can
government
control
right
you.
now, when vast swathes of the international community are criticizing Israel's government for what it's doing. I don't understand that. I mean, I remember when I was editor of the Daily Mirror over here in 2003, I opposed the Iraq War. It didn't mean that I hated English people. So I don't understand why this has to be the default position. And I had it all, by the way, from the pro-Palestinian side at the start of the war, when they all thought I was in the tank for the Israelis. I just thought Israel had a right to defend itself, but I kept asking, what is proportionate? I don't know, I kept saying. What is proportionate? And then I reached the conclusion several weeks ago, having been increasingly critical all year, by the way, and people can go back and check if they can be bothered, but I've been increasingly critical. And then when this blockade started, I thought they're actually starving people now. That is a war crime. You can't starve people. It's actually a war crime. And to not call out what you see would be a dereliction of duty as a journalist. But I just don't understand why criticizing a government means you hate a people.
It doesn't mean you hate the people. That's all trickery right there. That's just their way of going at you to try to get you to change your narrative there, change what you're saying. They don't want you criticizing that. They don't want you shining a light on that. And so what they'll do is they'll retreat and say, oh, you hate Jews. You're being anti-Semitic and all that nonsense. It's like, no. I just have questions.
Can you explain that?
Sure, I would definitely agree with you. Whether it's anti-Semitic or not sort of misses the point. It's just bad politics and it's bad policies. I'm not in the interest or in the business of dictating whether Israeli policy or the Israeli government is orchestrating the war well or not. What I will say is this, and Omar mentioned this earlier, if you truly believe that the innocent civilian population of Gaza are being forced to have this mass starvation efforts, if you truly believe that that is the case, well, okay, Gaza shares a border with Egypt. Why don't you allow, in the exact same way that has been fought in modern warfare of the last 100 years, anytime an innocent civilian population is facing war in their own home front, that you would safely evacuate them to a neighboring country? I remember when Amnesty International, when the Human Rights Watch, when Kenneth...
That is the other thing. Why don't you just let them be evacuated? They don't want to leave. They're not like what? I see what you're saying. Just let them all leave from the land. Let them all leave from their land. Let them all leave from Gaza. Okay. And then what happens? Oh, I can only imagine. Let me guess. It wouldn't be Israel going in there and putting up more settlements. That couldn't possibly happen.
There's an ethnic cleansing plot.
Hang on. When they said that it is
why
Bangladesh's
doesn't Egypt help us? Why doesn't Egypt help us with ethnic cleansing when they're dealing with overpopulation issues?
Great. So as I was saying, I remember when the Human Rights Campaign said that it was incumbent upon Bangladesh to welcome in Rohingya refugees. I remember when Kenneth Ross said that it was Uzbekistan's responsibility and Pakistan's refugee to welcome in Afghani refugees, when it was Turkey's responsibility to welcome in Syrian refugees. We want innocent civilians to be protected, which is why the Trump plan is a plan.
Okay, you should take them into Israel. Why doesn't Israel accept them?
And why do you interrupt? These are all very good questions. We have seen for the last year and a half that the only way we can safely evacuate 1.5 million people who are innocent civilians, I agree with you, is by opening humanitarian corridors into Egypt. But the problem is, every time we suggest that, it's ethnic cleansing. Okay, well then inadvertently, when human civilians are...
Why Egypt? Why not Tel Aviv?
1 second, because Hamas builds terror infrastructure underneath hospitals, and they build terror infrastructures underneath schools, then Israel is targeting innocent civilians deliberately, and it's genocide. Okay, if you truly believe that that's the case, let's safely evacuate them. Oh, we can't because that's ethnic cleansing.
Shabbos,
so I don't
all right, Shabbos,
hang on. Policy that
the most offensive part about this entire conversation is how people insult our intelligence as if we're morons and we don't see clearly what is happening on the ground right now. We see it clearly. The international community sees it clearly. The only reason why our politicians here in the United States back Israel, regardless of what it does, whether we're dealing with Democrats or Republicans, is because they're all bought. But the international community sees what's going on for
Look
what
at the
it
fire
is.
there.
And it is a genocide. There's an attempted ethnic cleansing. And I'm sorry, but Egypt's not interested in aiding and abetting the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from Gaza on behalf of the Israeli government. Not interested.
No, actually, Egypt is not interested in welcoming the Palestinian people, which is why they bombed Rafah 20 years ago, but the mainstream media never spoke about it because it really didn't ruin the narrative. And the second point I want to say is, if that argument, Anna, that you are using was used in the 1930s and 40s, that Jews should not be safely evacuated to the United States.
Right, I know.
One trick pony. They need to stay in Germany and they need to stay in Poland. Otherwise, it's an ethnic cleansing.
You're not going to silence my ass. You're not going to silence my ass by invoking the Holocaust.
Oh, wait.
But the mainstream media never spoke about it because it really didn't ruin the narrative. And the second point I want to say is, if that argument, Anna, that you are using was used in the 1930s and 40s, that Jews should not be safely evacuated to the United States.
I know. One trick pony.
They need to stay in
Germany.
One trick pony.
Otherwise, it's an ethnic cleansing.
You're not going to silence my ass. You're not going to silence my ass by invoking the Holocaust or calling me an anti-Semite. I don't give a shit. Okay, I see what's happening clearly. I'm going to speak up about it, and no one's going to shut me up. Period. End of story. We see what's going on.
Yes.
The entire international community sees what's happening. The Israeli government wants to genocide and ethnically cleanse Palestinians, not just from Gaza, but the West Bank too. Look at the terror they're dealing with in the West Bank.
Amazing.
The other lady's like, well, someone's going to get canceled. Someone's going to get canceled. You don't care about the Holocaust. You can't say that. Can we get rid of her?
What I find, hang on, Shabbos, please. Hang on. I want to go to Emily. What I find extraordinary, I genuinely mean this, is there seems to be either a lack of awareness of what the rest of the world is now beginning to feel about this, or a deliberate putting head in sand and saying, it's not happening, we don't want to hear it. Because, if I was an Israeli, if I was Jewish right now, it would be impossible not to be aware of how the world is beginning to feel about this, and that this has got out of hand, it's disproportionate, too many children are being killed, there seems to be no end game for this whatsoever other than, as Shabbos has just said, getting all the Palestinians out, right? Which is clearly what Smodrich, the finance minister, wants to do, and it's clearly what other members of that cabinet agree with him about. I just don't get why there's no awareness or deliberately willful blindness towards the growing international opprobrium from people like me, right, who've been very supportive of Israel's right to defend themselves. But there's just no apparent, all there is a digging in and a sort of blind refusal to admit that anything the Israeli government is doing is wrong, when most people, including 2 Israeli former prime ministers, have said it's not only wrong, but criminal.
Well, I think the fact that former prime ministers or former officials express their opinion about something doesn't necessarily mean that it is or it isn't, whether they agree or they don't agree. Israel is a democratic country. We have a lot of division and debate about this issue even now. And I also think that there is a tremendous amount of awareness of the hostility that Israelis and the Jewish...
I like how she just brushed that aside. Oh, sort of let's hear that again.
Well, I think the fact that former prime ministers or former officials express their opinion about something doesn't necessarily mean that it is or it isn't, whether they agree or they don't.
Right there. The former prime ministers and former officials. You're just going to brush aside their criticism. Oh, it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. Oh, really? Huh. Kind of seems contrary, Kind of seems like it would mean something.
Agree, Israel is a democratic country. We have a lot of division and debate about this issue even now. And I also think that there is a tremendous amount of awareness of the hostility that Israelis and the Jewish community are facing. Some of that is legitimate criticism of the handling and the conduct of the Israeli government. I myself have a lot of criticism of the current Israeli government, including, of course, Smotrich, but not limited to him. And I think that across the world, you see a lot of criticism from the Jewish community as well.
Amused.
Unfortunately, at the same time, we also see astronomical levels of skyrocketing anti-Semitism, of the conflation between criticism of Israel or even legitimate criticism of Israel and anti-Semitism, or anti-Semitism in the name of anti-Zionism.
Anna looks so professional here.
Communities across the world in the name of this cause. And that makes it very, very difficult, even internally. I'm speaking to you as an Israeli, even internally, to deal with problems that Israel has on the ground when there is so much illegitimate criticism and so much unfair criticism that is used to target Israel and exclusively Israel, even while there are all manner of conflicts all over the world happening right now.
They're slaughtering kids.
Hang on, Emily, I do hear you. Hang on a second, Anna. I do hear you, Emily, on that, right? Some of the anti-Semitism and the attacks on Jewish people, it's utterly appalling. Like all of that, I wouldn't qualify it, all of it is appalling. But I think the 2 things can be wrong at the same time. These attacks on Jewish people are outrageous, shameful, should not be happening. The rising tide of anti-Semitism is appalling and shouldn't be happening. And Jewish people should not be afraid to go out of their front door, which many I know are. I accept all of that. And I'm completely with Jewish people in wanting that fear to not exist and for the attacks to stop. But I can park, and I think everyone should be able to park, what is happening there with the separate issue of whether what the Netanyahu government is currently doing in Gaza is acceptable or not. And I think that is very unacceptable, what they're doing. That has nothing to do with my views of...
Unacceptable is putting it lightly.
...on Jewish people or rising tide of anti-Semitism. To me, they can be 2 different things. They can both be wrong.
I agree with you that both can be wrong. I'm simply answering your question as to whether or not there's awareness both within Israel and within the global Jewish community about this issue, about the fact that there is so much criticism and so much hostility when it comes to dealing with the state of Israel and how they're handling the conflict in Gaza.
Okay, fair enough. Omar?
You know, when Israel was coddled before, that did not change anything about Israeli policy. During the so-called peace process, all Israel ever did is build more and more and more illegal settlements throughout the West Bank and at the time even Gaza. So you almost want to feel bad for the people who are defending the Israeli position because their position is indefensible until you remember how monstrous the content of that defense is. Because on the one hand, you hear all this nonsense about how Israel is only trying to target the terrorists and they're killing civilians by accident. But 80%, more than 80% of the Israeli public in a recent poll came out in support of ethnically cleansing Gaza completely. You can't turn on Israeli media without listening to genocidal language 24/7 about.
Whoa. Okay. Well, it's what the people there want. Holy crap. Had no idea it was like that.
How it's time to get rid of Palestinians entirely. And in one case, you have a former member of the Likud party in Israel who recently said that even babies in Gaza, every last one of them, is an enemy. So in the face of an Israeli society and Israeli government that speaks like that, to now come along and say, no.
Baby terrorists. I was just joking around, but no, they think the babies are terrorists.
We're trying to do our best and it's only about defeating the terrorists. I mean, again, you're just fighting a losing battle, and that's why the world is fed up with it, because they see Israel speaking for itself directly, and then you have that filter that Israel's apologists who are trained about how to speak about Israel in a way that is supposed to be more palatable, in direct contrast to what Israeli policies actually are, and that jig is up. That game doesn't work anymore.
Okay.
When doctors, Western doctors, go to visit Gaza and see that there is a record number of bullets to the heads of toddlers in Gaza, and they see that there's no other conclusion except to say that toddlers are being targeted, you can't defend that as targeting terrorists anymore.
All right. Shabbos, final words from you, and then last word to Anna.
Sure. I would say two things. Number one, if we want to play the game of what individuals are saying about the war in Gaza, Hassan Nasrallah has repeated for years, it would be great for all the Jews to live in Israel because it would be so much more convenient to kill you in one location than having to hunt you down country to country. Thank God the Israel Defense Forces killed him. Yahweh Sinwar repeatedly said that there would be millions and millions of more October 7th, and we would have to fight to the very last child. Thank God the Israel Defense Forces killed him. I will say this. If you truly care about the Palestinian population, if you truly care about innocent civilians, then all I would suggest is that we would do what we have done in every single war fought in modern warfare when there is a refugee population. You would safely evacuate them into humanitarian corridors so you can take out the enemy combatants. And when the war is over, you will bring them back into Gaza and you can rebuild Gaza, not into the dictatorial, tyrannical regime it currently is, but rather the Singapore of the West, which is what it was meant to be.
This guy, I think, is just a useful idiot. You move them all out. You take out the Hamas, you take out the bad guys, but you're gonna move them back in and build up. No. You're taking that land. They're taking that land, and they're just building on it. Okay. That's. Yeah.
When Israel pulled out every last Jew, living and dead, in 2005. They wanted to build up.
I think he believes what he's saying, but it's just moronic. His name is Shabbos? Oh, wow, okay.
Gaza, so that could be an economic and cultural powerhouse. But instead, the Palestinian people elected Hamas, and we all know what that brought about. So if you care about the Palestinian people, then all I would suggest is do not have the Palestinian exception. Rather, follow the foreign policy of the last 100 years and safely evacuate the innocent civilians. You can take out the enemy. When the enemy is finally killed, you can bring it back. And if you don't like that option, I have another option. Tell Hamas to surrender immediately and return the hostages. But apparently, that's not conducive to Western civilization anymore.
All right.
That's a lovely fantasy.
Final word to Anna. Final word to Anna.
I just want to mention quickly that Emily is one of these Israelis who's going around doing propaganda tours on manufacturing consent for the United States to go to war with Iran on behalf of Israel. We can't make the same mistake that we did in Iraq. We should not go to war in Iran on behalf of Israel. If Israel wants to go to war with Iran, they should do it themselves without
exactly. Yes.
our military support, and that includes taxpayer dollars. Go do it on.
But here's the thing. If Trump doesn't do that, they're going to JFK Trump. That's fucking real. Dude. They'll JFK Trump, and they'll make it seem like it's Iran. That's what they fucking do. If Trump doesn't play ball with them. But this is 9 days ago, so that's I think you know the way Trump is talking, it sounds like he's already playing ball with them. So
on your own. Go ahead and enlist, baby girl. Go do your thing. But leave America out of it. Our men and women in our armed forces shouldn't die on behalf of your country, period.
Okay. I'm going to leave it.
It's like, it's scary. No, not scary. Maybe a little disappointing. It is a little disappointing how predictable it is. Because you've seen this stuff happen before. And you're like, oh man, I've seen these moves. Like, I already know what their play is. And it's right in front of us. Yeah, when BB said that, I mean, that was bullshit. with the first attempt that they got Trump's a part of Trump's ear. Okay, no, I don't think that was Iran at all. I think that was someone else for sure. But he already put that out there. He already put the alibi out there. I guess the scary part is that it seems like the fate is sealed, and like we're being pushed into something I mean, I say we don't want to happen, but obviously there's people leading us along that do want it to happen for their own gain, and they don't mind putting your kids on the front lines, you know, for their purposes, for their gain. They don't mind doing that. Who am I rooting for? I'm rooting that this all blows over and I don't have to worry about my son having to dodge bullets in a war where both sides, neither side, eats bacon. That's kind of fucked up. Actually, I mean, it'd be fucked up. Yeah, we don't want it. But as senators do. So that brings us to the end of this content for this stream. Tomorrow, we'll have some stuff for sure. I'll probably try to start early. It looks like no ghost pepper. That's fine. That might have been kind of painful. So, that's cool. I do appreciate you guys watching. This was a fun stream. Well, the fun was watching Anna Kasparian get fired up. So shout out to Alex Shield Jones, Bruce, Car Juan. Is that how I pronounce that? Car Juan. Jawuni, Hurricane Paru, and Manu. Thank you guys for hanging out. You don't eat bacon, you got to go. That's right. That's right. My plan is to start streaming early tomorrow, but I make sure the kids are cleaning the house and all that stuff, and then we'll get started. All right. Well, with that said, I hope you guys enjoy this. If you did, press the like button. You could, I was going to say throw in the super things or whatever, but you guys don't have to do that. That's fine. Anyway, with that said, you guys take it easy and have a good one. Watch the end. But we're at the end.
I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we're at the end. Anyway, with that said, y'all take it easy.